Good afternoon. So, Sarah here, aka the Business Fixer. First of all, apologies for not being live at midday. The important thing was I was helping a client with a email sequence, and ultimately, clients will always come first. So, today I am actually taking a slightly different turn to what I normally do. So, normally I will share in terms of about a key topic that I would already have done a blog about, because I know you guys will look at content in different ways. Some of you like to read, some of you like to watch a video, whereas this time, just something that I kind of really felt like I should share with you, because this is something that I see so frequently, and I think it's one of the challenges as business owners, and generally I think in life, that we come face to face with, and that is when people don't meet our own expectations. So this could be in terms of a supplier, it could be a third party, it could be a client, it could be a member of staff. And in your personal lives, it can be friends, it can be family, it can be all sorts of things. And it's something that I have come across quite a lot recently, because ultimately we all know that running a business is a roller coaster, and it can be an incredibly lonely place, and it can be quite a tough situation where you have this sense of frustration and disappointment as a result of something someone has done or not done. And I'll give you a couple of examples of this. So one of my clients had a situation where, and I've got to be careful here because of confidentiality in terms of what information I can share, but in essence, one of my clients had worked with a third party, and they were working jointly, but it was my client's responsibility to take a certain action. And their client was kind of jumping up and down because the action hadn't been taken, and my client had a justifiable reason why this action hadn't been taken, and it was down to the client to do a certain thing. And I know this sounds very cryptic, okay, but instead what the third party did, because their mutual client was jumping up and down, they took the action instead of speaking properly to my client as to the reasons why they hadn't. They just emailed. My client happened to be out the office that day, but they still did it anyway. Now, to me, and I got quite frustrated, and bless my client, it's like, Sarah, there's nothing I can do about it now. And I was like, I get very protective. I get very protective over people I care about, even over my clients, because ultimately I want my clients to succeed in every way possible. And for me, I felt this particular action was unprofessional by the third party. And it frustrated me because I know neither me or my client would ever do anything that would be we just wouldn't do that type of action. We would always be like, right, we need to clarify what the position is, because there may well be a justifiable reason. And this is a phrase that my now ex-husband used to say, and I think this is really applicable here. And he said, assumptions are the mother of all F-ups, basically. And I was like, again, this third party had made an assumption rather than actually seeking the facts. And, this is where in business, when these sorts of situations arise, how do you handle them? Do you go onto a complete and utter rant and it destroys the rest of your day because you are so frustrated by what has happened? Or do you, and to be fair, I have to say hats off to my client in this situation. He was like, it annoyed him, but he was like, there's nothing I can do about it, so I just have to get on with it. And that's actually a very pragmatic and probably the best way to deal with it. And there've been other situations recently that I had where effectively I've had to take a step back, or I have even really not just taken a step back completely, I've actually completely stepped back completely, not just from that particular issue that's going on, but from potentially from people, because ultimately I'm a believer that it's all about the positive vibes, right? I believe it's, like it's all about energy, and what you put in, etc., comes back. If you're positive, then positive is, positive. You act in a positive manner, then that's what you receive. And don't get me wrong, life is full of challenges, but how you respond to those challenges is what can actually make the difference, right? So in business, we know there are challenges. We are always fighting fires, whether we like to or not, whether it's a case of we're fighting fires because we haven't been paid yet, or we're fighting a fire because we're struggling to get new dream clients on board, or it's a case we've got a staffing issue, or the broadband goes down, or a supplier doesn't deliver when they're supposed to deliver. There's always going to be a challenge. And I think the key thing is when you have the right mindset, you become resilient to these challenges. You become able to be like, okay, let's look at the solution rather than focusing on the problem, and not get into the emotional frustration, anger. Now, don't get me wrong, we're human beings, we have to feel these things, but it's a question of not dwelling in it. So I got frustrated when my client shared that story with me, and probably got too frustrated because I know that my client had recently been hit in another way, and the reason why we put this particular principle in place was to protect this thing not happening again. And like I say, I get very protective, but he was right. At the end of the day, there was nothing he could do. It was done. He'd had the conversation with the third party to express how inappropriate it was and the reasons why, etc., etc. And I think this is the key, right? Is, and this is something I got taught years ago by my life coach. So when I had my mental breakdown, and I talk quite openly about everything that happened with me shutting the law firm down, etc. And my life coach at the time taught me about forgiveness. Now, it doesn't mean that you necessarily forget these things, but you need to forgive, because ultimately the anger and bitterness that you might feel as a result of a situation happening, it doesn't actually impact the person or the entity that you're frustrated and angry at. It only affects you. It affects how you then behave towards others, etc., and can have a knock-on effect, which is why it's so important that you actually forgive and let go. And I've been reading this book recently called The Power of Now. And it very much teaches you to be in the moment right now. Not focusing on the past. The past is the past, it's been and gone. Not focusing on the future. Now, it doesn't say about not focus, you're not having goals or anything, but what is it that you're doing right now that's towards that goal? What is the thing, the moment? And, and that also then, if you're in that, and it talks about enlightenment, right? And about being. And I think that when you are in this being state that this book talks about, then you don't actually get into those negative emotions. You can't, because being means you're in a positive state. And I think this is something where, as a business owner, this is a really powerful place to be, because we are often spinning those plates. We are wearing all those multitude of hats. We are constantly firefighting. And sometimes what we forget to do is just sit, take a breath, and be like, what is the one thing I can do right now? What is the one thing I can do with what I have right now? And I think that's where it's really important to remember that, because there's always going to be a list of things to do, but ultimately just focus on that one thing, get that one thing done, and move on to the next and be in that moment. And I see this so frequently with my clients where they get distracted, like if an email pings up or their phone goes off. And I've had that actually with a couple of my clients recently, where I was saying about, one of them was creating a blog. And I was like, well, why do you not get the blog done? It takes me usually about an hour to create the blog, make sure that I've optimized it for SEO purposes, put it into ClickFunnels, create a social media post about it. It's usually about that time frame. Now, I'm not going to lie, having the use of ChatGPT makes writing blogs a heck of a lot easier nowadays. And I was like, why didn't you get it done? I was like, well, I then got distracted by 3 or 4 things. And I was like, well, this is where you need to be being and focused and be, right, this is the one task I'm getting done right now. Then you tick it off. Then you get on to the next one. And this is where, I shared with this particular client what I do. And that is I go back to a good old paper. Night before, I, in a paper diary, write out what my intentions are of what I'm going to do that following day. And when I don't do it, I notice I am not as productive than when I do. So if I do, I don't necessarily get everything that I've written down done, but I do get 2 or 3 things done. And that's the key, is it's then getting me focused, say, right, at this time I'm doing this. Now I get it. We get bombarded by emails. We get things that be like, we've got to deal with this. But sometimes what you just have to do is you just have to say to yourself, I'm not doing anything else. Say to your staff, do not disturb me unless the building is on fire, because you do. And this is what I often call as power hours, where you just sit and you focus on that one task and you don't let anything else get in the way of it. You get that one task done. But if you then have times in the day, so for example, first thing in the morning, you get middle of the morning, and then at the end of or near lunchtime, then at the nearer the end of the day, where you then check in on your email. So if there is anything that's urgent, you can then deal with it in those moments, rather than dealing with it then and there just because it's come in. Because ultimately that's then when you don't get the other things that you need to do done, because you'll constantly be having emails and constantly having other things to do. But that takes you away from the key task, and that's where being in the now, focusing on that one thing, right? So this kind of live has gone sort of a little bit in a different direction. The reason why I wanted to do that is because these are things that I'm seeing my clients struggle with at this moment in time, where they struggle with, and even I have had the struggles, like I said, in terms of the reaction where third parties. So just to kind of summarize, right, is when you do come across a situation or a person that behaves in a way that you wouldn't, take a step back, don't react to it, respond. And there is a difference between the two. Is think about how you want to respond, and think about, okay, being in that now moment and thinking, okay, how can I resolve this particular issue? How can I deal with this? Is there anything I can do about it? If you can't, let it go. Forgive that person. Don't get into this feeling of anger and frustration. And then when you have a situation where you're trying to get a task done, again, go back to being in the now and just focusing on that one thing. Get it done, and just literally be disciplined with yourself to say, I need to get this one task done. I'll deal with everything else in a moment. Okay? And I'm hoping that those couple of strategies in terms of being and using this whole feeling of being in the now can help you not only deal with difficult situations, because we're always going to be faced with them in business, but also help you in terms of you having that discipline and focus. Like I do, plan your day from plan your day the night before if you can, whether it's on a piece of paper or digitally. I know everybody likes to use digital things these days. However it works for you, but plan it and be in that moment, and don't allow other things to come in, and focus on that one thing that you need to get done in that one moment. Be in the now. Okay? Now, if you have found any of these things useful, I would love you to share your comments. But the more important thing that I want you to do right now is I want you to join us from the 14th of October. We are running Business Transformation Challenge. One of the topics that we are talking about is mindset. It's about building a resilient mindset. Okay. And there will be real insights, valuable content that you're getting completely for free that can potentially help you transform your business. There's going to be a number of other topics that we're going to be talking about as well, but mindset is one of them. So if you are interested in joining the challenge, all I need you to do is put in the comment challenge and I will send the link over for you to sign up. It's running on the 14th. It's an hour every day at 5 o'clock. British summertime or GMT +1, whichever time zone you want to specifically refer to. But join us at the challenge, the Business Transformation Challenge. I promise you it will be game-changing, completely free. Make sure that you book your seat and you don't miss out on this amazing opportunity. Now, thank you guys for listening. I hope you've got some great value from today, and I will see you all again next week.